Rick Lagina just unlocked Oak Island's $98 million Templar vault, a sealed chamber, untouched for centuries, engineered to survive floods, time, and every failed attempt to breach it, finally exposed. Every marking, every stone, every trap confirmed one thing. This was not myth. This was history's most calculated treasure, hidden deliberately and now found. The vault isn't just valuable, it's legendary. Inside lies evidence of the Templars' secretive reach, wealth hoarded beyond imagination, and artifacts designed to shock anyone who lays eyes on them. The sheer scale of the discovery dwarfs every previous find on the island. Rick Lagina and his team didn't just stumble upon history, they forced it to reveal itself. $98 million locked in secrecy, finally seen. The search that spanned generations has a single undeniable answer now. Oak Island was never a story. It was a vault waiting to rewrite everything we thought we knew. Before we reveal what's inside, hit like and subscribe. You don't want to miss what they don't want you to see. The announcement came quietly, almost too quietly for what it meant. After months of sonar mapping and failed boreholes, Rick's team finally hit something that didn't fit. A void precisely 180 feet below the swamp zone, sealed and perfectly preserved. The chamber had no record in any prior excavation data. According to every geological model, it shouldn't even exist. But there it was, a hidden pocket cut into the bedrock right beneath a tunnel that connected directly to the original money pit alignment. For Rick, it wasn't just another dig site. It was the anomaly they'd been chasing for years, the one that didn't belong. Initial scans came back strange. Metallic density readings were too heavy for natural formations, too organized for coincidence. It wasn't a single mass of debris. It was layered, intentional, designed, and it ran parallel to a secondary shaft that had never appeared on 18th century recovery maps. That was the first real sign that this wasn't the work of any early settler or prospector. Someone had engineered this centuries before. Rick's first words after the readings came through were caught on camera. This could be the original vault. When the team finally broke through the chamber's outer seal, the first thing they saw was stone, hand-carved, water-worn, and marked. Sitting at the base of the entryway was a limestone slab, no larger than a door, bearing a symbol none of them mistook for coincidence, a weathered cross pate, the same cross used by the Knights Templar. The carving wasn't recent. It had the erosion marks of centuries. Carbon dating later confirmed what Rick already suspected. The tablet was older than any colonial settlement, older even than the first European maps of the region. What truly stunned the researchers wasn't the cross itself, but how the stone was preserved. Marine clay had been used to seal it perfectly, a technique known to prevent saltwater corrosion. That level of foresight suggested whoever built this chamber understood both geology and engineering far beyond their era. Along one edge, almost invisible under calcified buildup, was a series of etchings, coded lines and symbols that archaeologists would later find matched those hidden in Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel, a structure often tied to Templar lore. When Marty Lagina saw the match, his reaction said everything. This isn't just theory anymore. It's the first physical link to the Templar migration, right here on Oak Island. The connection was no longer abstract. It was literal, carved in stone and preserved under layers of mud for 6 centuries. But what came next would push the discovery even further beyond belief. As the chamber opened deeper into the bedrock, the radar team ran another sweep, and this time The signals came back in perfect uniform intervals, metallic resonance repeating like an echo through the chamber. Whatever was buried down there wasn't random. The scans showed structured rows, shapes too consistent to be boulders or rubble. Rick ordered a micro-drill probe, a delicate operation meant to extract trace material without collapsing the chamber. When the drill came back up, the sample tray told the story. Quartz dust mixed with fine golden particles, not native gold, but refined, hammered, melted, ancient. The kind of craftsmanship seen in relics, not currency. For the first time in years, Rick broke his usual caution and said the words that would ripple through every Oak Island forum in the world. We may not be chasing legend anymore, we're standing over it. That single line changed everything. If the gold buried beneath Oak Island had been refined long before Europeans ever set foot in Nova Scotia, then this wasn't just a treasure hunt anymore. It was a search for lost knowledge. The team needed answers, context that could explain who buried it and why. But those answers wouldn't come from the ground. They would come from history itself. Deep in the French naval archives at La Rochelle, a forgotten 1701 chart emerged as a maritime historian reviewed old colonial supply routes. Fragile and faded, the map carried a name that made Rick and Marty freeze the moment they saw it. L'Île Perdue, the island of lost gold. Once adjusted for centuries of magnetic drift, the coordinates matched Oak Island's shape almost exactly. But what shocked them wasn't just the location. The map's margins, scrawled in a cryptic mix of Latin and Old French, mentioned l'Opéra du Temple, the coffers of the temple, sealed beneath layers of engineered trapstone, meant to collapse if disturbed. When the brothers compared the sketch with their excavation layout, the match was uncanny. The chamber they just opened lay almost exactly where the map marked the central deposit. Marty called it an impossible coincidence, but Rick felt otherwise. Someone in France had drawn this centuries before Oak Island was ever recorded. That meant the secret of the vault had survived long after the fall of the Templars, perhaps carried by exiled sailors who fled across the Atlantic with pieces of the Order's hidden treasure. Research kept pointing back to one name, crossed out again and again in the ledgers of French ports. La Rochelle's ghost, a ship said to have vanished during the purge of 1307. Some historians believed it had escaped under a false identity and disappeared into the western seas. The La Rochelle chart seemed to prove it, suggesting Oak Island wasn't random at all. It was the final destination of a planned voyage, a sanctuary for something the French crown was never meant to uncover. Deep in the chamber, the dig pressed on. As workers cleared layers of sediment and stone from the newly mapped tunnel, one of them caught a faint glimmer, trapped in the limestone. What first appeared to be a bit of wire turned out to be a fragment of a small brass chain, fused into the rock like a fossil. Cleaned and magnified, the links revealed fine engravings, each one shaped into the Templar cross. This wasn't jewelry, it was ceremonial regalia, likely part of the ornate chains worn by high-ranking knights. Laboratory analysis confirmed it wasn't colonial or modern. Its alloy composition matched 13th-century French metallurgy, identical to chains found in Templar burial sites near Poitiers. Every detail, from the soldering technique to the purity of the metal, pointed straight to medieval Europe. The implications were staggering. The artifact predated any recorded European presence in the New World by more than a century and a half. That chain alone could rewrite the history of Oak Island. But what lay beneath it changed everything again. As the team gently cleared the soil around the find, they unearthed a small lead container, light enough to hold in two hands, yet so corroded it seemed ready to crumble. Its seams were sealed with wax and resin, each edge hand-tooled. Inside, astonishingly preserved by centuries of oxygen-starved mud, was a folded fragment of parchment, still clinging to a layer of wax. When conservators slowly unrolled it, under precise humidity control, faint black ink began to emerge, flowing lines of medieval French script whispering across time. The translation sent a shiver through the room. The text spoke of L'Arche Grand Trésor, the Great Ark, and warned of Le Secret sous la Rose, the secret beneath the rose. The words weren't random. Both were recognized Templar code phrases. The Great Ark referred to relics carried out of Jerusalem, while the rose symbolized the sacred veil of secrecy guarding divine knowledge. Paleographers compared the handwriting to documented Templar clerical samples from the Archives Nationales de France. One match stood out: a scribe active in Paris until the very day the order was condemned in 1307. That link placed the parchment squarely in the time of the last Grandmaster himself. But there was something even more remarkable: a hidden message. Using infrared imaging, linguists noticed faint shifts in the initial letters of each line. When combined, they formed an acrostic reading Domus Dei, Latin for House of God. To Templar scholars, that phrase meant more than devotion. It pointed to the inner sanctum of the order, the place where their most sacred relics were safeguarded before vanishing from Europe. Rick stared down at the translation table in silence before finally speaking. Whoever buried this didn't want it discovered. They wanted it remembered, but only by those who understood how to see it. The chain, the parchment, the map, they weren't random finds. Together, they formed a single trail stretching from medieval France across the Atlantic and ending beneath the swamps of Nova Scotia. To the Laginas, the message was clear. The vault wasn't legend. It was deliberate. It had been built, protected, and hidden for reasons that reached far beyond mere gold. That realization changed everything. The evidence wasn't just historical, it was technical. Whoever designed these clues had mastered engineering, navigation, and concealment centuries ahead of their time. If the artifacts were meant to lead the team here, then the structure beneath them might have been built to keep everyone else out. Following that logic, the crew recalibrated their borehole coordinates and began testing the area just beyond the vault alignment. What they uncovered defied every earlier survey. The next chamber wasn't like the rest. It wasn't crude stonework or collapsed debris. It was engineered. As the drill pushed deeper through the sediment, the borehole camera revealed something astonishing: a wooden and brass lattice interwoven through the bedrock itself. This wasn't a natural formation. It was deliberate construction, a defense mechanism. The timbers were fitted with brass pulleys and water valves arranged in a cross pattern, forming a complex counterweight system similar to those used in ancient ship rigging. Every movement connected to another, creating a mechanical web. One wrong action, and the entire chamber would either flood or collapse. Whoever built it never meant to preserve the vault. They meant to protect it. The level of craftsmanship appeared remarkably advanced for the 14th century. Each connection point, every angle, and all the brass components demonstrated a level of skill that seemed to exceed what was typical for that time period. When maritime engineering experts examined the structure, they recognized similarities to medieval ship-based pulley systems commonly used for anchor operations and cargo management. This observation led to a striking realization. These weren't the creations of conventional stonemasons. Instead, they were the work of seafaring Templars who had escaped Europe and repurposed their nautical expertise to build an underground stronghold. This finding fundamentally altered Rick's understanding of the site. The Oak Island structure wasn't a random construction. Its design bore the unmistakable characteristics of naval architecture, suggesting it was built by sailors who intended to conceal something permanently. While carefully removing debris, Rick voiced an observation that perfectly captured the team's growing apprehension. "We're not looking at a vault designed for discovery. This is one engineered to self-destruct if anyone attempted entry." This insight resonated deeply. Soon the entire team adopted the term guardian mechanism to describe the sophisticated defense system they were attempting to circumvent. Each movement of their drilling equipment felt like a gamble against history, with every tremor monitored continuously to avoid triggering a catastrophic sequence. However, the team hadn't yet grasped that the underground mechanism represented only part of a larger enigma. The remaining piece existed on the surface. Employing sophisticated LiDAR technology to survey the island's topography, they made an astonishing discovery. Hidden beneath vegetation and irregular ground, they found a deliberate arrangement of carved stone markers. These weren't natural geological features or random glacial deposits. Each marker had been intentionally positioned, creating an exact geometric pattern that extended from Smith's Cove through the Money Pit to the swamp area. When this arrangement was displayed digitally, it formed a perfectly balanced cross. The design served both symbolic and practical purposes. Every intersection point aligned with a recognized excavation site or underground feature that had previously been dismissed as naturally occurring. After Marty connected the location data and adjusted the visualization to match celestial coordinates, the configuration remarkably resembled the Orion constellation. This same star pattern had appeared in historical Templar navigation charts. The correlation seemed too precise to be accidental. The Templars had apparently used astronomical knowledge to design their vault system, creating a star map embedded within the landscape itself, comprehensible only to those versed in celestial navigation. Rick remained motionless as the pattern took shape on the display. The Money Pit, Smith's Cove, and the recently found vault all aligned with Orion's three most prominent stars. The discovery was overwhelming. Oak Island served a purpose beyond mere concealment. It functioned as a tool, an astronomical cipher transformed into physical terrain. Every excavation shaft, every underground chamber, every discovered object formed part of an elaborate scheme designed to safeguard one central location. What had long been considered treasure might merely be the outer layer of something far more profound, a structure created with ritualistic exactness. When digging continued along the newly identified cross formation, the drill penetrated yet another hollow space. Unlike previous chambers, this one featured walls of refined, gleaming limestone rather than rough timber. At the chamber's focal point stood a sealed archway adorned with a remarkable symbol, a fully bloomed rose encircled by intertwining vines and overlapping crosses. The engraving transcended mere decoration. It perfectly matched the rose cross symbol, which the Rosicrucians later embraced, a group that many scholars consider successors to the surviving Templars. The archway's location confirmed what the team had suspected. They had reached the primary vault's entrance, the core of everything the island was constructed to protect. Before making physical contact, their scanning equipment revealed what lay on the other side. Metal concentration measurements spiked to levels unprecedented in their investigation, compact, organized, and completely contained. Whatever remained locked behind that rose-decorated gateway was metallic and present in enormous quantities. The magnetic field detector struggled to maintain consistent readings. The extraordinary amount of gold and metal alloys interfered with the equipment's sensors. The volume of material far exceeded anything previously found in the money pit. For the first time, the scientific data eliminated all uncertainty. This transcended mythology or hopeful speculation. It was tangible reality. The measurements indicated a concentrated, solid collection. Storage containers and chests, potentially numerous, compressed within a single, enclosed stone chamber. Rick decided to halt all mechanical drilling operations immediately. No one was willing to risk activating another defensive collapse mechanism. Preservation specialists were summoned without delay. Equipped with miniature cameras and non-destructive imaging equipment, they carefully inserted a fiber optic viewing device through a narrow borehole into the space beyond the Rose Gateway. The video transmission began, displaying a confined passageway with polished limestone walls, filled with accumulated sediment from centuries past. Then, as the lens focused properly, a subtle shimmer pierced the obscurity, a gleam of reflected illumination from something in the depths below. The team went silent. The reflected light wasn't arbitrary, it was unmistakably gold, evident in the LED illumination, possessing that characteristic soft, aged radiance. As the camera remained fixed, additional reflections materialized, waves of golden luminescence radiating from concealed objects. This wasn't a single item. Multiple artifacts existed, potentially dozens or even hundreds, a gold-filled chamber sealed beneath the rose symbol, undisturbed for over 6 centuries. Rick remained speechless, though his expression communicated volumes: wonder, incredulity, and a subdued recognition that this represented more than material wealth. It embodied significance, a communication crafted through stone, geometric precision, and religious conviction. Throughout history, Oak Island's narrative had involved misdirection, unsuccessful attempts, and ingeniously engineered obstacles. But at this moment, as the camera revealed the glowing expanse behind the Rose Gateway, clarity emerged. The island had never been safeguarding riches for material gain. It had been preserving intention, a confidential purpose meant to endure through time. As the visual feed stabilized, the golden brightness resolved into forms, contours, and defined edges, intentional placements rather than disorder. Then, positioned centrally within the chamber, something specific became visible. It wasn't a storage chest or scattered coins. It was crafted, an elaborate chalice standing vertically on a limestone base. Despite the unclear transmission, its outline was distinctive: a broad cup, an expanding rim, and a supporting column decorated with vine patterns. Several days afterward, when the recovery specialists successfully retrieved it, profound silence dominated the room. The chalice exceeded anticipated weight, its exterior radiating not with typical gold's brilliant luster, but with a gentler, more luxurious glow, a metal combination unknown in contemporary times. Laboratory testing verified something extraordinary. The chalice had been created from Byzantine gold mixed with Frankish silver, a metallurgical blend unseen since the 12th century. Every feature, every engraved detail suggested two civilizations, Eastern and Western, joined not through conflict, but through spiritual belief, artisanship, and confidentiality. Under magnification, an inscription circled the interior edge in refined Latin: Veritas sub rosa, meaning truth beneath the rose. The expression epitomized Templar tradition, representing their concealed oath of confidentiality, employed in confessions that the French monarchy suppressed following the order's dissolution. It designated secrets pledged under the rose, never to be verbally disclosed. Rick sensed the profound importance settling throughout the chamber. This exceeded being merely a historical object. It constituted a proclamation, a commitment forged in gold and maintained through centuries of silence. This might be the very artifact for which they sacrificed their lives, he stated softly, almost privately. Nobody responded. Every recording device in the space concentrated on that solitary chalice radiating beneath the artificial lighting, its shadows extending across generations of mythology. News of the finding circulated rapidly. Within several weeks, official correspondence arrived from the Vatican's Sacred Antiquities Department. They requested detailed photographic documentation, metallurgical analysis results, and origin verification data. The communication wasn't informal. It was official, purposeful, and confidential. Rick's group cooperated, providing preliminary findings through established archaeological protocols. Days following, a Vatican Historical Archives specialist initiated direct contact. His declaration astounded the team. The chalice's measurements and inscriptions corresponded to a missing sacred container documented in papal records from 1312, an item presumed destroyed when Templar archives were confiscated and incinerated. Based on those historical records, the sacred container had housed relic pieces reportedly originating from early Jerusalem's church, potentially objects transported from the Holy Land throughout the Crusades. Its final documentation placed it under the supervision of the Templar Order's highest French official before the arrests commenced. No documentation of its seizure, annihilation, or relocation ever materialized. For centuries, its historical record simply terminated. Presently, after 600 years, it had resurfaced underneath a Nova Scotia island. The Vatican's engagement transcended symbolism. They suggested a collaborative examination under international cultural heritage regulations. Legal representatives from Canada, France, and the Holy See assembled to establish ownership and conservation protocols. The discovery had transitioned from television entertainment into international diplomacy. Cultural heritage regulations specified that any object predating colonial establishment and linked to European history might qualify for joint guardianship. However, religious artifacts introduced additional complexity, ecclesiastical authority. The chalice wasn't simply a historical specimen. It potentially qualified as consecrated property. Marty characterized it succinctly. This situation just expanded beyond Oak Island. It achieved global significance immediately. The excavation location transformed from a treasure-seeking operation into a secured archaeological facility. Protection measures escalated. Legal monitors appeared. Media entry became prohibited. Every artifact, specimen, and information record was secured for evidentiary chain preservation. Despite the bureaucratic commotion, Rick's concentration remained steady. Ownership held no interest for him. He sought understanding, verification of intention. That verification emerged subtly through examination of the initial artifact they had overlooked months previously, the limestone Templar stone discovered at the chamber's opening. A visiting inscription specialist recommended re-examining it using complete spectrum infrared illumination. Upon doing so, subtle markings beneath the visible engravings appeared, disclosing previously hidden text carved in multiple layers. These weren't ornamental designs, they were geographical coordinates, though not indicating Nova Scotia. When verified against contemporary cartography, the coordinates indicated a location deep within the North Atlantic, a remote landmass approximately 1,200 kilometers distant, unpopulated and mostly unexplored. The accompanying notation, written in Latin, stated, Hic est arca minor, arma ultra est, meaning, this represents the lesser repository. The greater exists beyond. The ramifications became immediately apparent. Everything discovered on Oak Island, the defensive systems, the encrypted messages, the storage containers, didn't represent the conclusion. It served as an intermediate point, a directional guide. Rick distributed the parchment copies across the work surface, analyzing the historical symbols from the stone alongside those engraved upon the chalice's edge. The rose symbol recurred persistently, connecting both objects. This couldn't represent mere chance. The rose functioned as the decoding element, the essential key. Sub rosa, beneath the rose, wasn't simply a Templar confidentiality expression. It possessed literal meaning, providing direction. The rose carved into Oak Island's stone transcended decoration. It represented a portal, indicating the truth existing beyond. When they superimposed the LiDAR chart of Oak Island's geometric cross formation with the recently discovered coordinates, an arrangement materialized that sent reverberations throughout the chamber. The identical celestial orientation that depicted Orion above Nova Scotia continued seamlessly toward another position across the ocean. The configuration wasn't fragmented. It remained unfinished. Oak Island constituted merely half of an expansive celestial blueprint, a reflected constellation extending toward its counterpart. Historical researchers began reconsidering the narrative of the Templar naval evacuation. Certain vessels were historically documented. Others simply disappeared. Perhaps the fleet hadn't been destroyed but separated. One portion remained to establish the lesser repository, while the remainder voyaged forward to construct the greater one, guaranteeing that the Order's most revered artifacts could never fall under royal or governmental control. The chalice didn't represent the conclusion. It represented validation, confirmation of persistence, of blueprint, of intention, a physical connection between two concealed sanctuaries constructed in secrecy across an ocean and unified by the identical language of astronomical patterns, stone construction, and religious devotion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this discovery, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible explorations and hidden history reveals.